In this lecture, we are going to define two external components, have one send the signal and have the other receive it. We're going to go to Qt Creator and do that. Okay, here we are in Qt Creator. We're going to create our project. It's a Qt Quick application as usual. We call it external component signal slot demo. Save it in the usual location, hit next, choose our Qt version, choose our kit, and finish. We want to change the title here, and we want to add two components. One is going to be notifier, and the other is going to be receiver. We click on QML QRC here to add a new file. It's going to be a QML file. This is going to be notifier. We want to add another one that is going to be the receiver. And we want to finish. Notice that this Qt Quick import is old. We are using 2.11 in main, so we should change that to 2.11. Inside this item here, we want to put a rectangle. We want to give it an ID, a width of 200, a height of 200, and a color. Let's make it red. Inside, we want to put a text component. The ID is going to be display text ID. It's going to be centered in the parent. And we want to make it a little bigger. So we're going to say font, point size. Let's do 12. We're going to see how this looks. We want to come to the root level here and define a property. It's going to be an integer. We're going to call this count, and it's going to start at 0. The text of the text item is going to be the count, just like this. So what we want to have is to have a rectangle that is clickable, and when you click it, this count increases, and we can see the count in the text component here. So let's put a mouse area component that is going to fill the rectangle. Anchors fill parent. On clicked, we want to increment the count by 1. So we're going to say count plus plus like this. And when we do that, the number that we see in the text component here is going to increase. So to be able to use our notifier component here in positionals like row and column, we need to export the width and the height here. Let's do that. So we're going to say width equals notifier. Width and height is going to be notifier rect ID height, just like this. We also want to expose the color of the rectangle here so that users of this component of ours can have the flexibility to set the color. So we're going to expose it using a property alias. Property alias. Let's say rect color, and it's going to be notifier color, just like this. We can now save this, come back to main, and inside define a notifier component, just like this. We can run the application and see if it works as we want so far. We're going to have a red rectangle in the top left of the window, just like this. And if we click it, it should increment and show us the number going up. So we should have 0, 1, 2, and going up like this. This is what we want. I also want to increase the point size for the text in here. We made it 12. I want to make it 20 and see how it looks. Because we are changing the code in the component in an external QML file, sometimes Qt Creator doesn't pick up those changes unless you come to the main file and apply some changes. So I am adding a few spaces here. You may need to do this if you see that your changes are not applied, and I like this text better. Okay, now we have our notifier component. The information we want to send is this count here. Okay, we are having it here and displaying it, but we want other external components to have this piece of information. So we're going to define a signal that is called notify, and it's going to pass a parameter that is a string, and it's called count. We want it like this. We have declared our signal. We want to fire it, and we're going to fire it whenever it changes here. So after we increment the count, we should say notify count, and our signal is emitted. So what I want to do is to build up the receiver object. Because everything is pretty similar, I'm going to Control-A, Control-Copy to the entire notifier object. I'm going to save it. Come to the receiver, Control-A, delete everything, put in the notifier object, and take out what we don't need. We want to take out the property int count here and the signal notify. We don't need that in the receiver, but we want to change the IDs here. So we're going to say receiver rect ID and change this wherever we had that. We're going to say copy, paste here, paste here, paste here. We also want to expose the color. There's no reason not to do it. We also want to say receiver display text ID. We want its text to start at 0 like this, and we don't want it to be clickable because it's not going to be sending out any signal. It is a receiver. But we want to define a slot inside, and it is this slot that is going to be connected to the signal from the notifier. So we're going to say function. Remember, it is a normal JavaScript function. Receive info. It's going to receive count. And we want to use this count to do two things. One is set the text of this text component here. So we're going to say receiver display text ID text equals count. This is done, and we want to console log. We're going to say receiver and we're going to say the number that we received, which is the count here. Okay, this is all we want. We have our notifier and we have our receiver. So what we can do is come back to main. Let's save this first. Come back to main and define a receiver. We want to anchor the receiver to the right so that we can see it. So we're going to say anchors right parent right. It's going to be forced to be to the right side of the window, and we want to give them colors because we can do that. We're going to say rect color. Let's make this yellow, green. The receiver is going to be Dodger blue. Why not? Yellow, green. This is better. We want to save everything, run the application. We have our two rectangles. When we click on the first one, the data changes, but the receiver is not receiving the messages because we haven't connected the signal from the sender to the slot of the receiver. That's what we want to do next. Okay, you can do your connections wherever you want. In this case, we want to do it when the notifier component is loaded completely. So we're going to go inside the notifier and do component on completed. We want to do notify. Remember, it is a signal of this notifier component. We want to say connect, and we want to say receiver ID. Notice that we didn't put in this ID here, so we should do that. ID receiver ID, and let's give the notifier an ID too. So we're going to say notifier ID. So we want to call the slot from the receiver. And just like this, we have done our connection. Connect signal to slot. This is how you do it. If everything is all right, we're going to see the data change in the receiver object, and we are going to see this message here. Let's run the application. Fingers crossed. And you see that as we increase in the sender, we also increase in the receiver. Our connection in the main file is working. And we just did the connection here, but nothing prevents you from taking it out of here and putting it at the root level when the entire window is loaded. For this to work, you need to pass in the ID of the notifier. So we're going to say Notifier ID and dot like this. Let's run again to see if it still works. And just like we expect, our things work. The next thing I want to show you is that you can also wrap the connection in the notifier object and not have to do it right here. The way you can do that, you can come to the notifier object and give it a property of the target element that is going to provide the slot. You can say property, the data type is going to be receiver, and we are going to call it target. And it's going to be null by default because we don't want to specify it. But we want to be notified when the target is set, and we are going to capture that in the onTargetChanged signal, because when you set it, it changes, and we want to do the connection. Okay, we want to say notify connect target receive info, just like this. Okay, let's save this. And what you would need to do in the notifier object is take out this connection here because you don't want to do this twice and specify a target. Okay, so you're going to say target and it's going to be receiver ID. Okay, just like this, you see that we don't have any connection here. We did everything in the notifier object by giving it a receiver. It is null by default, but when we set it here, the onTargetChanged signal is fired and we are doing the connection. Okay, the connection is made when we define this target here. I hope this makes sense. If we run, you're not going to see any difference. Click and you see the signal sent by the notifier and received by our receiver component here. I really hope this nails down the way you work with signals and slots in QML, because it really is simple. You define your signal, you fire it, and then you connect it to a slot. And just like that, you can pass data back and forth between your components. In the next chapter, we're going to look at user input elements. I'll see you there.